Welcome back. My name is Gabriel with Matt Out. Today we're building a garden glider. Now these are super customizable, so there's a whole bunch of different variations that we can go on. We can put different benches, different tables, different rooftop. So there's a whole bunch of different things we can do with this type of system. So what I'm going to do is a pretty simple one, but I'm going to show you right now just a bunch of different ones that I built in the past, and I'll see you after this. Alright, so like I alluded to you in my introduction, there's really nothing to building these garden gliders. The most complicated joint in this entire build is going to be a half lap. Now if you know how to do that, you're like 90% of the way there. In terms of how to build like the bench themselves, I mean I did a full in-depth video on that before, so I'm just going to leave a pinned comment below here with a link to that and a link to where you can get all the hardware necessary to build this bench or this glider, because the hardware is essentially the hardest thing to get. Other than that, we're going to start with the build. So we're going to do a montage of me building blanks for these benches. Get excited. Alright, so the blanks for the backrest of my benches are all done. What I'll do, I'll just put it aside for now because I won't need them until much later into this project. What I'm going to concentrate on right now is the actual frame and the gliding system for this entire swing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start rough cutting the pieces to length. By that I mean I'm going to cut them 2 or 3 inches longer than what I need them, and then I'm going to rip my 2x6s to 4 inches, and that's going to allow the stress of the wood to take action. So if there's going to be a bend or something in the wood, I can deal with that on my jointer and then straighten it out completely on the table saw to 3.5 inches. So that's what we're going to be doing in this clip. I'll see you on the other side. The frame is pretty much all completely done except for assembly. It's been sanded, it's been cut to size, so what we need to do is concentrate on the assembly. But before I do the assembly, there is one part of this that hasn't been done yet, and that's the rail system that goes inside of this frame, and it's kind of integral for spacing for parts of the frame and stuff. So I have to set up my router table with the template stuff in order to build that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just end up doing all the template work before I move on to building the actual framework, which is not a bad thing. I mean, I still need to do the template work, but I really want to use this bit over here. It's not, you know, it's a pretty good bit. I mean, this is a bad bit, what I'm doing right now, but this bit here is pretty good. It's a Forstner bit. Basically made to bore out pretty large holes. And I'm going to show you how I'm going to use this bit a little bit later. But this bit over here, that bit's pretty bad. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and cut the templates and start doing that. And I'll see you on the other side. Yeah, this bit's really bad. Alright, so all the template work is done. My entire shop right now is covered with a thin layer of dust, which isn't exactly fun. That means everything's going to be dusty as hell in here for a little while. So yeah, we have to deal with that. So we're up to using the bit, this Forstner bit, and building up this frame. So let's get to it. All right, so what we've done over here is just stack up the frames, and we used wheels like this, like the wheels are going to be on it, as spacer in order to lift it up and give us the height that we needed in order to measure how high the deck is going to have to be. So pretty easy how we measured that. We just used our combination square and measured the distance between the frame that's going to be at the bottom and the top of the top frame. And then we just took an inch off because we're using decking that's an inch thick. So it just works out that way. All right, so at this point in the build, we took the frame and whatever, we put outside on our trailer, just sticks out of the way because we're going to be building benches. So we need the room for the benches on this workbench. Boy, I'm saying bench a lot. Why do they call this a bench and that a bench and that a bench? There's like, what is a bench? I mean, we're talking about a bench, like a park bench that you can sit on. Not a bench you can work on. Not a workbench, though I guess I could probably sit down on this bench, but I mean, why is this called a bench? Can I call it a work table? I guess I could call it a work table, but it's a workbench. It's a workbench. All right? I don't get it. Anyways, where am I? Yeah, so I need to clear off my workbench right now because we are going to be building a couple of park benches that go on top of that glider that we put outside. Now, we already built these things on the camera before, so I'm just going to go over it really quickly with this, like, you know, really glaze over it. But if you want to see the full build on this, I'm going to leave a link in the description below or in the pinned comment, somewhere along those lines. And yeah, it's going to be there if you are interested in, you know, building one of these swings. All the information that you need, where to get the hardware and everything is going to be in the information down there. So let's go ahead and do that. We're ready to start building the table, so let's get excited about that. We're going to keep with that limitation of only doing like the half lap. We're going to make it something a little bit more complicated, but at this point we're going to walk you right through this because there's really no big complications with this whole thing. Like I said, if you can do a half lap, you can basically build a bench and a table like this and the glider perfectly well. So let's talk about the anatomy of the table itself. What it is 4 boards. It's going to be the same width of the actual glider itself. The four boards are going to be held together with two rails going across it. These rails are going to be screwed into the actual tabletop and glued into it. And then there's going to be two skirts that's going to go over, and it's going to straddle those two rails right over there. So we're going to do grooves that are going to go right in there, and like I said, it's going to fit in between those two rails, really nice and snug. There's going to be pocket holes that we're going to do in there, and that's going to be screwed into the tabletop, because these skirts is what's going to hold the table to the legs and what's going to steady the whole thing together to stop it from going like this, or is it like this? One of the two. It's going to stabilize it a lot when the legs come over here. So the legs are going to go all the way down into a foot, and that foot is what's going to be screwed into the actual deck of the table. So the glide itself with the seats are going to move together with the table. All right? So the complicated thing with this is to make the actual grooves for the skirt themselves, so they're going to be perfectly aligned with those rails. So what we're going to do, we're going to show you how we did that onto our table saw. But before we go there, we're going to talk about the setup just a little bit. So the blade itself is going to be at 2 inches tall. That is the exact height of the rails. So the blade is going to be set up at the same height as the rails. For this, I'm using a blade that has a flat tooth. So it's going to give me a flat bottom when I chew everything out from the groove itself. The distance of where the rails are going to be is kind of arbitrary. I didn't plan it out or anything like that. I thought maybe 6 or 7 inches would be perfect for it. So that's where I decided to set everything up with my fence. So to make the actual grooves themselves, what I did is I used the rail, I put it right up against the fence. Then I used both of the skirts together, and I just pushed it against the rail, and then I just pushed it right against the saw. And what that does, it does the outside edge of the groove itself. So that's the outside of it. Now for the inside of the groove, what I did is to compensate for the size or the thickness of the blade, I just put one of these biscuits over here. These biscuits are very close to what the blade thickness is. So these are very similar, like handicap to it, I guess. Anything that's the same thickness as the blade will do for this. We just use this as a proxy for a spacer. So now what we did, we just brought the skirt and we just put it right up against that biscuit and we passed it through. So now we have the inside and the outside of the groove. All we have to do is just chew out the middle, and we'll just do it one pass at a time. And it takes a little while, but we're able to do it pretty quickly. Now we just took that skirt, turned it around, did exactly the same thing on the other side, and now we have 2 grooves that fit our rails perfectly. Now, because we don't know exactly where those grooves are in relation to the tabletop, because we didn't really measure, we just kind of put it arbitrarily with the table saw. We use the actual skirt to align where the rails are going to be on the actual tabletop. So we use the rails, we use the stock that we're going to be using for the legs to space them out to know exactly where they're going to be. And yeah, so where the skirt is going to be is where the rail is going to be. So we just want to go ahead and screw everything in and glue everything together. Makes it super simple when you don't need to measure really. You just gotta, use the material itself. Then we went ahead and put some pocket screws down into the tabletop, And basically our tabletop's completely done, along with the skirts and everything else, and they're ready to put the legs in, because we use the legs to space out where the skirt is going to be. Now for the foot itself. So the foot, we decided to do a groove in there as well. Basically, we went half the distance with this one. So pretty similar to a half flap, but we didn't do a half flap on the legs. We wanted the legs to protrude a little bit. We thought that it looked better with the foot not being in the same plane with the actual, leg going all the way up. At least that's what I thought. It looks better. It's up to you if you want a full half flap here. If that's what you want, then you do it that way. I'm not here to argue what your tastes are. This is how I like doing it. So basically I did it to 3/4 of an inch, and I did exactly the same type of idea. I used a leg as an indicator of one side of the groove. Then I put the spacer in, which is one of these biscuits. I did the other side of the groove, and then all I did was like chew out, made like little lots into the wood, and then I took those out and I just chiseled them out to make them nice and smooth. And now I have a groove that's perfectly tailored to the actual tabletop or the legs that go in there. So it makes it super simple. No need to make super complication measurements or anything like that. It's tailored directly to the piece themselves. So super easy. Hopefully you enjoyed this little tip of how to build these types of grooves, because if you can master this, it's super easy. It's going to move your woodworking a little bit better, because it's not complicated. Woodworking is not complicated at all. It's just incrementally getting better. That's all it's about. Now the kit itself comes with everything that you need in order to set this up. It comes with the L brackets. We just gotta, put some holes in there. It comes with the axles, the wheels. The axles themselves need to be assembled. Basically all I did was I use a piece of scrap, put on the ground, put one side of the axle down, and there's like a middle piece they put in there. This has a little bit of a conical thing that you need to like press in, I guess. And then you put the top on, then I just put another piece of scrap on top, use a hammer, and I hammered it down. I'm going to show you how I did that, along with how I drilled some holes into the L brackets. If you don't want to drill a hole in L brackets, you can go to any hardware store and grab some L brackets and use those. Basically I put one screw into the leg, 2 screws into the framework itself. I don't want the leg to split open. That's the most sensitive part, so that's why I only put 1 screw in there. And let's face it, all the weight's going down. That's how gravity works. So there's not a lot of resistance going to side motions for the glider. So we just decided to go with that route. The best way of doing it, in my opinion. As for the tabletop itself, not the tabletop, but the decking. The decking, all we did was do some 1x1s. We just used the scrap from the 1x6s, and we did 1x1s. We put 2 screws going into the deck, 2 screws going into, or like the frame rail of the deck, and 2 screws going to the frame, the bottom frame rail that we made sure to align ourselves for the height thing earlier. And yeah, so this is basically the full build. What we're going to do, we're just going to do some different benches coming up. We're going to do a little bit of a different bench, a little bit more complicated bench. So if you want to see that, just subscribe, like, comment, all that kind of jazz. And we'll leave you with how smoothly this glider is going to be working. But I'll see you next time.